So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this live session with a very special guest that we have today with us, Shrutav, who scored a perfect 805 on his recent GMAT. Uh, Shrutav, um, this journey has been tremendous, and it has had its own ups and downs. But Shrutav is here to, discuss with us how his journey has been, take us through his ups and downs, the challenges that he faced, and how he came out with the perfect 805 on the GMAT. So, Shruta, before we get started with your journey, uh, tell us about yourself. I know you're from IIT and you work with Cummings, but just tell us what you do, and let's just get acquainted with our viewers here.
Sure. So I graduated with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from IIT Madras in 2023, and since then I've been working in the field of data science here in Pune. So yeah, I think maybe that helped me a bit in the DI section. I'm used to seeing a lot of graphs. So
And of
yeah.
course, I think Quant too, coming from an IIT background, but it's not
Hmm.
like you had it easy when it came to Quant or DI. And we're going to talk a lot more about, how you've made it here. But Shruta, before we get into that, can you tell our viewers what made you choose? You're already from a premier institute here in India, right? So, what made you choose GMAT as the next progression in your personal professional growth?
So I wanted to do an MBA, right, for some time now, and
Mm-hmm.
for that I think GMAT is one of the uh, most important exams. And so I had some time. I thought instead of waiting until the last minute of when I'm applying, I should utilize this some spare time that I have and start studying and give the exam now itself. Maybe have some uh, free time later on. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay, so how was the initial part of your GMAT journey? As in, I'm sure you sort of did research, you tried to understand what this test is all about, but uh, what were the steps that you took once you decided that you want to take GMAT? Uh, and what were your ABCs that you did?
Okay. So so once I read about the exam, I think as everyone else would, I tried to study on my own. Right. I tried to get as many resources as I could online, textbooks or just questions in general. I tried to go through them, solve some amount of questions, but I felt like I wasn't making a whole lot of progress. So like I was going through the textbooks, I was spending a lot of time, but there wasn't any measurable progress, or it felt like I was stuck at some point. So that's when I decided that I needed to have a more structured way of going forward. Maybe go with some test platform, a test prep platform that would help me, map out my journey and help me reach my goal.
Got it, got it. So, Shruta, you did mention that there were certain things that you could not see that kind of an improvement, right? So, what were those main challenges that you thought you have you were facing in terms of getting to a good school?
Um, so first of all was the format of the exam. It was quite different from what I've faced before. We're not used to adaptive tests, and also the verbal section was completely new. I've never seen questions like this before. So initially, I was just reading the question, reading the options, going back to the question, going back to the options. There was no method I was following, and that's just not sustainable in the long run. So
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I needed more structure. There has to be some method or some structure that if I follow, it's repeatable for every question, and that's what I was searching for.
Got it. Did you, any time when you were sort of researching for GMAT, when you considered GMAT and started preparing for it, think that you would be here discussing your perfect GMAT score?
No, I don't think even before the exam, when I was prepared to give the exam, I wouldn't have thought that I would get this score. But
Okay.
I'm
Well,
lucky.
no, you are not lucky, honestly, because there is something called as what you set out to achieve, you achieve, and this is where I really want to sort of show this, share my screen to all of yours here. This is the study plan that you created, sort of getting into the GMAT prep. And what we can see is in your study prep, you've clearly mentioned your target score as a 100 percentile score of a 795, right? So I think from the get go itself, you set your sights, you know, at the summit, and that is where you are. Okay. And I think this is a nice segue into, because we just discussed about the study plan. What role did that study plan have on your journey? And how did you zero in on maybe e-gmat? Because the study plan is from there. So, and how, what role did the study plan have in your journey?
Right. So I'd heard about this platform from a couple of people, and I thought I'd give it a try. I tried the trial version of your platform, and it felt really nice. Like the platform was really interactive, and then the data which you were providing based on the questions I was solving or the coursework I was going through was really informative, and I could see that there was structure to it, right? So every time I was doing something on the platform, I could see where I'm making the improvements, how much improvements I'm making, and how to get from where I am right now to where I want to be. So I think all of that was really mapped out very well on the platform. I think regarding the study plan, there's it's such a vast syllabus for the GMAT. There's so many things to do, and it doesn't make sense to do all of them from scratch. You'll have your
Mm,
strengths, you'll have your weaknesses, and you don't have that a whole lot of time or patience to go through everything in detail. So I think that's where the study plan, where it identified my strengths, it mapped out the next 2 to 3 months, how much time I wanted to give for the exam, every week what I should be doing, what I should work on, when I should take my marks, after the marks, how I should analyze them. You helped me a lot in that as well. So
yeah.
yeah, there's a really good structure to this.
Yeah, I think that structure is super critical, right? Otherwise, it is like, okay, I want to do this on a day, I want to do this on another day. That off structure things really impact your prep. Big deal. Now, Shruta, before you sort of, you know, uh, let's get into the. I can see there are a lot of questions. How did you do your web? How did you do your quant? And a whole lot of questions. And guys, we'll take all your questions up. The structure we have is we will delve into Shrutav's journey, wherein we discuss about his verbal, his quant, his DI, challenges he faced, how he overcame all those. But there's that one question wherein I can see that who's this? Kevin asks, how did you score a 695 straight off the bat in your first attempt? So it was not a first attempt for Shrutav, it was a cold mock. But Shrutav, tell us, yes, your cold mock score was a 695. How confident were you of that 695? Because I know, having worked with you, that we were not very confident of replicating it. But
Yeah.
you know what made you get to that score, right? And despite that, what were the challenges that you anticipated and you faced during the journey?
Right. So the 695 was like the first test I gave, and so I had a bit of confidence in quant because I come from an engineering background. I faced a lot of similar questions before, and so I think I scored maybe near perfect in quant in the mock. and then as well as in DI, because a lot of it is like data sufficiency. There's a lot of quant in it, graphs, tables. I have a lot of experience with them. I see a lot of it at work. Probably that's what past experience led to that score. But verbal was, I think, the biggest challenge for me. I had no idea how to approach it, and I really wanted to, learn the methods needed.
Very true. And I think that's a perfect segue. You got a perfect V90. Did you think you will get there when you started?
Not at all. Verbal was like my
But
weakest section. So.
yes. No, but honestly, Shrutav, a lot of credit goes to the way, the kind of structured approach that you put into really building your foundation, letting no stone go unturned and learning those processes. Because honestly, even as you're starting out, yes, verbal was the bigger challenge, but you had your own strengths and weaknesses. But you did not get prejudiced or overconfident with that, but you ensured that A, you learned your concepts, B, you learned how to use these concepts to solve questions, right? So tell us when it comes to CR. Let's take it one section at a time, knowing that this is your biggest thing. Uh, with CR, I know that you did a whole lot of pre-thinking. Uh, and
Hmm.
what kind of difference did that make? A, in your CR accuracy, B, in the confidence with which you are solving CR questions, and C, when it comes to timing.
Hmm. So initially, as I said, I was just reading the questions, going through the options, maybe reading the question again, and I was getting stuck in this loop. And using this method, it felt like I could maybe eliminate one or two options, but then there were always two or three which looked very enticing, and I didn't know which one to select. So that's when I realized that that I'm not doing it the right way. And pre-thinking, basically, it's once you read the argument, you come to certain conclusions on your own, like let's say identifying the premise, the main conclusion, thinking through how did the author get to the conclusion from the premises, maybe thinking about a few assumptions. And once you make that connection, and once you get to the conclusion and yourself, I think it makes it a lot easier to eliminate a lot of the options. There's a lot of wordplay in the options. There's a lot of ones that seem to be right, but once you think through the entire structure of the argument, it becomes very easy to eliminate the wrong ones.
Got it. So what I hear you say is, that intuitive uh, approach to solving verbal questions, where you read the question and looked at the answer choices and picked one, what felt right, was not giving you consistent results. What you needed was a framework that sort of helped you zero in on the answer choice. Right. My
Yeah.
next obvious question is, now you're taking a pause. You've read the question. You take a pause before you go to the answer choices. Doesn't that sort of increase your overall time?
Yeah, I think you're investing that time upfront, instead of wasting it later by reading the options, not knowing what is correct, going back to the question, trying to search for some keywords. If you invest that time upfront and you're really clear about what the argument is, once you start going through the options, it becomes very easy to identify which one is the right one and which one are potential traps or completely irrelevant options. So as a whole, I think it probably saves time, um,
Yeah,
using
and
this.
I have
Yeah.
a brilliant graph here to show all our viewers. So this is your CR graph. You already, as we discussed, you already were at a decent level, but from there you improved to a 90% accuracy, which is almost a 95th 100 percentile. But what we can see is also that steadily your time taken for solving each question kept coming down. So end of the day, it is like front loading your time so that you save the time that you otherwise would have spent in doing the answer choice analysis. Uh, Coming to RC, Shruta, what were the major challenges? I know both of us are
Um,
laughing. So,
Yeah. So, so the major challenges, obviously, I think, the type of RC turned out to be a huge challenge. But maybe what led to that was overconfidence. uh, I thought that, RC was going really well for me when I used to face, topics which I had some background or at least some interest in, like tech or business. I felt like I could grasp the passage really well, and I was able to get a majority of the questions correct. And as it turns out, when I got these other types of passages, history, literature type, it felt like even after going through the entire passage, I was not understanding anything. It just flew right over my head. So yeah, there was some structure needed there as well of how to approach those kind of questions.
and that is where the I think the reading strategies came in, wherein it took your way of tackling RC from a very subject matter driven kind of a thing to breaking it down into a framework, how to sort of slowly read, draw linkages, understand what the author's intent is, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Shraddha, there is this one question that I see in the comments. I don't know if you've been able to see. Guys, I'm taking everybody's question, but the relevant questions I'm taking as we discuss. There's this one question wherein a person said, I am not from an English medium, I'm from a vernacular school. Uh, so, how easy or difficult is it to crack verbal? And from my point of view, having worked with a lot of people, a lot of non native speakers who have also been from a vernacular medium, I know for a fact that GMAT verbal is a test of critical thinking and not so much as language skills. But Shruta, having been there, done that, what is your opinion about that?
Um, yeah, so I mean, the language, it's not like they are going to test you on a lot of difficult words or vocabulary or things like that. You basically need no prior knowledge before writing the test, at least for verbal, right? It's just about, when they present you with this huge passage, how are you able to identify the critical elements and link them together, and create some type of structure out of the entire passage and go on to solve those questions. So yeah, I think it's all about mainly critical reasoning. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Shruta, starting with verbal, you know, going, you know, the section being your most challenging section, the section that you are the most underconfident about. Once you've done this prep, once you had sort of internalized the pre-thinking approach, the reading strategies, how confident were you now that of the 9 questions, 10 questions I solved, 8 to 9 I'm going to get them right.
So towards the end, I had a good level of confidence just because I'd solved so many questions before. You know, after a certain point, it feels like the patterns are repeating. Where when you start reading a history kind of passage, you start seeing some repetitions that okay, they're following a similar pattern or structure as I've read this before. I know exactly what to look for. So it does get easier as you go along.
I think what makes it easy is to have that framework, to have that structure, because once
Yeah.
that becomes intuitive, you, as you rightly said, you sort of, solving questions becomes a lot at a spinal level because your brain is processing the framework and then you are sort of solving the question. And the proof is that your weakest section is one of the sections where you scored a perfect 90. Yes, it's perfect score across, but V80 to a V90 is a tremendous achievement. uh, Now coming to Quant, Shraddha, you are from one of the premier institutes here in India, which is IIT. Getting there itself is a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. It is challenging, and one thing that we know about people who crack IIT entrance is that Quant is good, right? And and you did get that Q90. But having worked with you personally, I know for a fact that you did not take it for granted. Uh, you've been with e-gmat, you did the entire e-gmat course. You did not come to the board with the presumption that I have cracked one of the most difficult entrance tests here in India, so I know everything about quant. But you were humbling. You were like, okay, I still might not know a few things. I will do the entire thing. So tell me what made you take that decision, and are you happy that you took that decision?
So yeah, I think giving my initial mock, just going through a few questions made me realize that I had most of the concepts down. There were some sections or areas where I was completely new at it as well. I didn't know anything about it, so that's something I had to work on. And also, I think while solving it, I realized that the methods which I was using, even though I was getting to the right answer, probably they were a bit lengthy, very stretched out. It used to take a lot of time. And, it used to feel like I could solve all of the questions if I was given maybe a few extra 10-15 minutes. So I think once I realized that I needed to cut down my time, I started putting in more efforts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the pace feature came into the play, wherein you saved over 40 hours, ensuring that you were tackling your weaker areas in quant, uh, and you could devote those additional the 40 hours saved into places that you were actually underconfident about. So, how important is to have this kind of strategic approach to your preparation? Um, Especially
Uh,
when you have other areas of priority, but at the same time relating to you what is your strength, but you still know there are weaknesses. You don't want to let it go, but you you still want
yeah.
to ensure that you're not spending time where it isn't needed.
Yeah, so I think identifying the weaknesses is a very huge part, something that probably self-study would not allow you to do because uh, it feels like when you study on your own, it feels like you know everything or you'll get to know everything. But going through those few questions which you use to diagnose my strengths and weaknesses, um, it really helped me understand why my weaknesses were weaknesses. I think it really helps when you have an explanation of why it went wrong rather than just what went wrong. So even areas where I felt were my strength, after I went through the solutions, it felt like I was doing it in a completely different manner. I should just scratch that manner and start new. So and of course the time saved is that's really needed because right now there's a lot of things going on in life. It's not just GMAT prep and studies. There are a lot of different things. So every hour or every minute saved is important. Yeah.
True, true, true. But Shruta, if I may, I think end of the day it also boils down to how much are you willing to devote to this prep? What all are you not willing to take for granted? How much are you ready to push and get there? Because I think a perfect score is nothing short of excellence. And uh, having worked with you personally, I know that honestly you did not leave any stone unturned. Getting into the prep in your mind, I know it's not in your mind. I know that quant was your strength, but you still were going to. You're willing to go that extra mile to get there, right? So
Yeah.
and you also said that I could get this question right, but I knew I could get this question right using a different approach in a far lesser time. So
Hmm.
that means to say that that is the kind of investment you put into the strategic review and error logging. So I really want to segue into that aspect, as in, knowing that uh, the score is well earned, wherein you did not let a single question that either you got wrong, you took longer on, or to an extent that you were underconfident about. lie to rest, just thinking that, okay, it was an avoidable mistake or a silly mistake.
Yeah.
So tell me how easy, difficult is it to do that strategic review, and what role did it play in finding again?
Um, so I think reviewing the questions is much more important than solving them. I've always said quality over quantity. Just blindly solving questions is not the way to go. Every question you solve, you should review, where you went wrong, why you went wrong, and if you went if it was something conceptual or maybe just a silly mistake, whatever it was, you should write it down somewhere. And I think that's where the error log really helped me. I always maintained a very structured error log. So I would, save the questions. I would write down why I went wrong, even if it was a silly mistake. Like maybe I forgot to read something. I used to write it down, and that led to better habits while solving. Like for example, there's a lot of word problems in Quant. So towards the end, I was writing down all the variables, what they were representing, and what exactly the question was asking for. And this helped because a lot of times I would read the question, it seemed like I knew how to solve it, I would solve it, and I would select the answer, but they were actually asking for something else. So going through these reviews, strategically knowing why I went wrong, where I went wrong, that's really important.
Got it. That also, I think, one important feature of strategic review is also, while it is very, very important to do strategic review, you need to have the right kind of means to do a good strategic review, which essentially is, you look at how you solve, you have a framework as to how, you can optimally solve this question, look at what the median time for that question is, look at what the accuracy is. So the strategic review goes way beyond and is a great means to sort of really hone in your skills. And I think that is one of the most ignored parts when it comes to prep, right? Because most of
Yeah.
us, yeah,
Yeah, even the time required to solve, it doesn't seem really important, but that once you have that, so like a couple of questions I was getting them right, but I found out that the median time of other students or other people to solve it was significantly lesser than mine. So it made me wonder, am I doing something wrong? Am I going through a lot of unnecessary steps? And that sort of thing you don't get when you study on your own. On your own you get a question right, you just move on.
yeah,
So
yeah. And see, end of the day, it's a percentile game. It is a test that
mhm.
tests your percentile. So you better be better than a lot of the people out there. And if you want 100% answer, you better be better than all the people out there, right? So,
Yeah.
Shraddha, really kudos to you on having done that, because honestly, uh, you know, working personally with people, I know the importance of strategic review, and never has it been that a case wherein I have asked Shraddha, tell me why this happened, because you always had done the review, you knew why something, you know, was not clicking, and you had the answers to why it was not clicking, and how do you ensure that you click. So this is where I think DI also. You mentioned that you've been working in this field, you work with data day in and day out, but like in the case of Quant, you did the entire e-gmat course when it comes to data insights. You did cementing, you solved like almost close to 500 questions in data insights. Why go that extra mile? And how did going that extra mile ensure that you get that DI right?
um, Yeah, so as before, there's a lot of different ways to get to the answer, but it doesn't always mean that the way you follow is the optimal way. And especially in an exam like GMAT, where time is of the essence, sometimes going for some tricks or shortcuts, it saves that much time which you can invest somewhere else, and maybe that leads to a point difference of 15. 20 points. So you know, I had some knowledge of how to go through these questions, but going through the entire course, it gave me different methods and some nice tricks and things to look out for while going through this all of these questions. Also how to approach these questions, uh, identifying my strengths, my weaknesses, because I think DI is a section where you feel like you run out of time towards the end. There are only 20 questions, but I think is the longest section. At least it was for me. So identifying my strengths, identifying the weaknesses, trying to cut down time on my strengths to give more time towards the weaknesses. That's something that your platform really helped me analyze.
Got it. Uh, One another thing, Shruta, as we are talking, is you have a perfect 805 score. Goes without saying you have a perfect V90, a perfect Q90, a perfect DI90. It just feels so good, you know, speaking it aloud. But that has come from a basic principle of not settling, not saying that this is good enough. Let me I want to save time. I'm good with data insights. I'm an IITian. I am good with Quant. I know I can do it. What you said is, yes, I know I'm good, but I want to be excellent. I want to be the master. And I think that is where the whole difference lies in, There are a lot of people who get to a lot of scores. There must be five, six, seven, maximum 10 people who got to a perfect score. And that's the differentiator because having worked with you personally, there was never, you know, anything that I asked you to do and you said, no, Rashmi, I don't think I need to do that. I I'm sorted. I know how to do it. You're like, okay, fine. This is what you say, this is what I need to do. So tell me, what is the difference? You, you know, somebody asked here in the comments that you were already at a 695, what takes to get there, but that was your inherent ability which you thought you will not be able to replicate. Okay, but from there to after having put in all this preparation, after having jumped through all these hoops and hurdles, uh, what was the difference between Shrutav, who scored 695 on his cold mock, and Shrutav, who had done all this and was willing to get into the test?
Um, so I think on the cold mock itself, I wasn't confident that I could replicate it. Right, I think that's really important. Scoring high on your mocks, or having a good accuracy percentage while practicing, it's different than doing it on the actual exam day. And I think that's really important, that you should be able to replicate whatever you're able to do in practice on the actual day itself. And that's something I had some experience with because I've given quite a few exams. So I knew that even if I had this confidence before that I can do well in maybe one section or the other, on the actual day itself, the confidence, it plays a big part. But more than that, it's about your structures and the strategies that you want to follow. And that's what happened during my first exam, right? I didn't really lay out a big strategy. If I face some tough questions, as I did, I spent too much time on them. I ran out of time towards the end, and it felt like I could have done better. So yeah, I think you know going through this strategic review is really really important.
Got it, got it. So, Shruta, you segued very naturally into, you ensured that all your T's were crossed, all your I's were dotted. You take the test, you are at a 695. Uh,
Yeah.
what was your feeling?
It's
And why did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same score as what I got on my cold mock. So
Yeah.
Probably it seemed for me, at least it seemed initially that I've put in 3 to 4 months of a lot of effort, and I am back where I began. So, but yeah, after further going deeper into test day and how it panned out, I was able to identify that there were things that went wrong. That there was like proper reasons why I couldn't perform to the best of my abilities on the test day, and that's what I worked on over the next month or so, maybe 20 25 odd days,
25 days.
yeah, before my final attempt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Those were those pesky history passages and small little things, right? And we'll come to that. But I think at this point in time, let's take some questions before we get into what is it that you did differently in your next attempt. Because I
Sure.
know that there are a lot of questions. So let's segue there and then let's come back to our you know discussion. So unscripted life. I have no other better name here, but that's what it says. Unscripted life has this question about, how did you prep for verbal? With what mindset you practiced it? I'm sure you've covered a whole lot of it, but is there anything you want to add on to what you've already sort of uh,
um,
spoken about?
so yeah, I think understanding the underlying concepts of for CR there's a particular way to solve those questions. For RC there's a particular way, like pausing after every paragraph, maybe taking down some notes. Once you have these concepts in mind, it's about making them into a habit, because I don't know, that didn't come naturally to me. Like whenever I read a passage, I just read it all at once. I don't think too much about it. But you know practicing a lot with these methods or concepts in mind, it became like a second nature to me. So during the exam, it came naturally to me. Whenever I saw a CR or an RC passage, I knew what I had to do. I didn't have to spend any time thinking about the method to follow. It just after practicing so many questions, it just becomes natural. So I think practice, but the right type of practice is really important.
It is about making the approach into second nature for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Dave's question is sort of a spoiler for our next segment, which is how did you pivot to that 805? But let's take the first part. You know, how did you pivot from that 695 you were already at to where you got to,
um,
and what resources, strategy, things that you used to get to
so
that.
I think a major part of it was the mental game, right? Being prepared for it mentally. There were things that I didn't do properly in the first attempt. So I think if you are able to be mentally ready on the test day and be completely charged, completely ready to give the exam, it makes a huge difference than being anxious or being nervous about the exam. And that's something that on the second attempt I felt like I was really ready. I had I had a lot of energy to give it my all, and that's what made a huge difference.
Yeah. It is from thinking you can do it to knowing you can do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Gia has this question that I've just put up on the screen. Which mock test did you go for? How accurate were they?
Right. So
And sort of, Krista also has a similar question. So, I'm just going to combine these two questions. Apart from official mocks, did you take any other mock CDs? It's sort of the
yeah.
same question.
So I think there's not a whole lot of marks out there, especially the adaptive type ones. So I did go through most of the official marks. Apart from that, e-gmat itself has a couple of full marks and a lot of sectional marks. I think towards the end I'd finished almost all of them. And G GMAT Club. also they have their focus tests. There's also a lot of sectional mocks there. So that's also adaptive, and I think basically these are the three resources which I practice from most. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I think having a good quality mock in order to get to, one, validate where you are at. Second, to ensure that you're working on the right time, kind of test taking skills is important, right? So, Himanshu has this question. I'm stuck at V83. That is where you sort of were also at one point in time stuck, Shrutav, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah.
and also about, you know, getting stuck with those last two pesky answer choices. So help
Yeah.
Himanshu and
So,
everybody else sort of
um,
overcome this.
so yeah, whenever you plateau, I think it's important to identify why it's happening, right? So there's something or the other that's going wrong while you're attempting these questions, and you really need to identify what is going wrong and why it's going wrong. So for me, it was because I wasn't following the right structure, right? I wasn't thinking before looking at the options. Um, and in some RCs, it was I wasn't taking notes. I was rushing through them. I was able to identify these weaknesses and practice a whole lot on them. So I think in the last month before my final test, I practiced a lot on RC and the type of RCs where I was really weak in, historical literature type, and taking notes. That's something that worked for me. But basically, identifying your weaknesses and working a lot on them, because that's the only way you can improve. Otherwise, you'll be stuck on the score.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
true. And I think there was this one conversation I remember, Shruta, we had when you said history related RCs were a big problem to you. And we discussed if you're good with science passages, if you're good with humanities passages, you better be good with history passages because it's the same framework, right? It's like saying I can drive on the streets of Bangalore, but I can't drive on the streets of Mumbai. It's the same
Yeah.
framework. It is mostly the fact that you as a person don't are not comfortable with these kind of passages,
Yeah.
which is what makes
Ex-
the difference. Especially if you are already at a good space when it comes to all the other kind of passages. If you're not there, then you have to work on your framework. If you're, if you have a certain kind of accuracy for most of the other passages, it is mostly your resistance, your reluctance, your, how do I put it? You are not, uh, your dislike to that particular
Yeah.
passages, which sort
Yeah.
of
Lack of interest. Yeah.
right, yeah.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
Shraddha here got like what, three history related passages
Yeah.
on
All,
this
all
first
RC
attempt?
questions, yeah, in the first attempt, all RC questions were history or literature type, and that was very demoralizing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But we had the same conversation that we're having now to say that if you can solve a physical science related passages, there is no reason why you cannot solve a history related passage or a humanities related passage, right? Uh, but moving on, we have a bunch of questions, Sridhar. I think we've taken the official mock reason. Um, yeah. What was the time you invested daily for prep given working professional? So Udisha has taken my next question away from you. But how did you
Yeah.
manage your prep with the busy profession
Um,
that you have?
Yeah, there's not a lot of time during the weekdays, right? But so for me personally, I felt like early morning after a good night's rest was when I was, really fresh, and my mind was, I could concentrate a lot on studies. So during the weekdays, I used to devote maybe 2 to 3 hours at max, mostly in the morning. Um, then go to work. in the evening I would be very tired. So I couldn't, devote more time during the weekdays. But on the weekends, I think I would devote maybe 4 to 5 hours, maybe more, depending on my mood. Uh, but yeah, I think it's probably not about the quantity of hours, but the quality of hours.
Yeah.
If you are spending 2 hours, how much time of that are you actually focused? How much of that are you distracted? So yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah. And I think a great thing is also about the quality is I think all of us need to understand that we're doing it for ourselves. It better be worth it. It's every
Yeah.
second, every minute, that every hour that you're spending away from maybe doing what you want to do, because this means something to you. So it better count for the seconds, the minutes, the hours that you're spending on this, right?
Yeah. There should be the
So
drive, right?
yes, that has to be the drive. You need to know your why very, very clearly, and that's why we started the session by asking Shrutav, why did you want to do this? So Disha has also this other question. At what point did you completely shift from reading theory to solving questions? I think with the e-gmat we have a very very clear structure. You cannot move to solving questions. Reading theory is again you solve a ton of questions as you're doing that. It is because you cannot learn anything without solving questions. But there is a stage where you know your foundation, you learn your concepts, you learn how to solve a question before you move to transitioning to completely just solving questions. But
Hmm.
Shruta, having been there, done that, I want you to take this on.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think initially it's just about reading the theory, right? Getting those key concepts down, practicing a bit of, not a lot of, but at least a bit of questions that, you have the theory, you can replicate it on the questions. And once that's strong, I mean, once you're confident that, you know the concepts by heart, then you should just move on to solving questions. And I think about timing yourself, that should be a continuous process, right? That would give you an idea of, where you were in the beginning and how you've improved over time. Maybe it took you, say, 3 to 4 minutes when you first started to solve a CR question. Then once you started working on your concepts, on the theory, the strategy to solve it, maybe that time dropped down to 2.5 minutes. So you can see the progress, and that's kind of motivating. So to know that all this effort, it's actually accounting to something.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the sort of graph that we shared earlier, Shruta, from your own journey, right? You
Mm.
started with that two 2 minutes 66 seconds with a sort of 70% accuracy, but as your accuracy started going up, your time also started going down. That means it was not just about when you just focus on say timing as an aspect, then things don't turn out. When you look at it as a package, where you're looking at your ability, as your ability improves, your timing goes down. So, uh, timing is always a byfactor of your ability.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Uh, David has this question. Um, how did you approach quant and DS questions that you have not seen before, unique and require more logical thinking?
Um, so at least for quant, I practiced a lot of questions from, these different sources like the OG books, e-gmat, GMAT Club forum quiz. And so towards the end, it felt like even if I was seeing a question which is completely new to me, uh, I would have solved at least a similar type of question before, or I knew the concepts I needed to solve the question. So it was all about, just the process of solving it. So towards the end, I wasn't wasting time thinking about, how to solve it, but just the time was going in the process of solving the question. So I think that just requires a lot of practice and having the conceptual clarity about all the topics. Yeah.
Mhm. And I think each practice that you mentioned, Shrutav, has to have an objective. Primary
Hmm.
objective being the metric, secondary objective being what is it that you set out to achieve in terms of do you want to tackle your behavioral errors, do you want to tackle your timing errors, those kind of things, right? So they
Yeah.
were that is super super critical. Now coming to Mohit's a sort of a segue into it, DI issue is the time
Uh,
management.
Yeah, then that's a very common issue in DI. Uh, so yeah, as I had said before, right? So for me, I identified my strengths and weaknesses. So data sufficiency was a strength for me mainly because it included quant, and you don't really have to solve the entire question to know whether each statement is sufficient or not. So something that I actively tried to do while solving the DI section was whenever I saw a data sufficiency question, I tried to get through it as fast as possible. Um, you know, save as much time as I could on these strengths of mine so that I could put more time on the weaknesses, which were MSRs. So, in the MSRs, I would spend a lot of time, 4 to 5 minutes, going through the passage, going through the options. Uh, that's what happened to me during my first attempt. There were two MSRs. I spent too much time on them, and I had to guess the last 4 or 5 questions. So, something that I learned along the way was, maybe this is very specific, but in some MSRs, they the passage is very, very dense. They pack a lot of information in it. Sometimes you don't need to understand all of it to answer the questions. That's something I took with me during my final attempt. So, I would skim through the passage, go to the questions, and then, you know, uh, pick some points in the passage to go back again. So that's just identifying your weaknesses and trying to find a way around it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very important, Shruta, because I was just writing. You, your core mark score was 695 with the DI.
Hmm.
You know, when I look at your PSP and you know, but you still, after doing the course, still had certain challenges that you had to overcome. The fact that you got two MSRs, which sort of derailed you on your first attempt. But there's so much learning, and end of the day, it comes back to the not settling. Just because you scored a DI 85 on your first mock doesn't mean that there are no further learnings to be had out of it. There were a lot of learnings that were to be had out of it. There were a lot of learnings to be had out of your first attempt on the
Yeah.
GMAT. And before I take any more questions, I have a bunch of them, right? Shraddha,
Right.
let's talk about this. All this we talk about. You left no stone unturned. You did, of course, verbal getting into the prep. Verbal was a challenge. Quant DI, you were at a comfortable space, but you said no. I don't want to settle. I will ensure that I do everything that it takes to do everything, you know get ensure that all my t's are crossed and i's are dotted. You took the test. Your score was a 695, uh, which was your first mock score, right? And
Yeah.
before getting into the disappointment part of it and everything, just 25 days down the line, you took the test, you got a 8 or 5. Okay, two things come out of this. One, that 695 was not the actual representation. Two, you did not do a whole lot between your first and second attempt. You were ready for the score in your first attempt itself. So tell us, how did you tackle that disappointment and get to where you are now, wherein you're speaking to so many people, giving them strategy inputs.
Yeah. So yeah, I think as you rightly said, there wasn't a whole lot different in terms of concepts or learnings between the two attempts. It's not like in those 25 days I learned a whole lot of new things, new concepts to apply. Um, Most of it was just the strategy of how to take the test. Some tips of how to approach the test day itself, uh, how to be completely ready for the test. So during my first attempt, obviously it was the first attempt, I was really nervous for all of the sections. The initial few questions, I felt like I spent a lot of time on them. I didn't want to mess up, and uh, towards the end I didn't have much time left for the last few questions. That's something that went wrong. Identifying this was a big part of it, right? It's not that I got a 695 and then I didn't do anything. I tried to identify everything that went wrong on the first test day. That also included cramming a lot of things, studying a lot on the day of the exam itself and on the day before the exam. That I think had an effect on my energy levels, because I went through the error log, I went through my notes even an hour before the exam. When I reached the test center itself, I had my notebook open. I was trying to memorize some formulas, something or the other, and that probably made me feel like I started on a low energy level. Um, I didn't start in the most optimal way I could have, and I wasn't in the best shape during my first attempt. And that's something I changed a lot during the second attempt. So starting from the day before the exam, I gave up studying. I didn't open the book. Maybe the night before the exam, I went through my error log once. I did a lot of things to take my mind off the exam. I slept a lot. Even before the exam, I took a small nap. On the day of the exam itself, I didn't study, and when I went to write the exam, I felt so fresh. It was like I was really well rested. I felt like I could use all of my mental capacity on the exam, and yeah, I think those are the major differences.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful word you used, mental capacity, because GMAT is a test of critical thinking. And if you're
Yeah,
fatigued, then you are not thinking critically. Right,
yeah,
and you are making those mistakes. And I
exactly.
remember this conversation that we had when you got the 695, and both of us agreed this is an outlier. Maybe this is a score for the most of us, but no, this is not a score for what the stats meant that you could get to. And I'm so glad that you gave yourself that chance, and here is where we are, right? Uh, I have some more questions. I'm just thinking about should we go to the questions that people have here? Let's go there and then let's come back here, I would say, right?
Okay,
So let's take the questions. So, just as I'm looking at the questions, one thing is Shrutav sort of improved from, I wouldn't call it improvement, but his first attempt was a 695. 25 days down the line, he had a perfect 805 because his first attempt was an outlier, right? Um, so, Rohan has this question. He wants a step by step breakdown of your GMAT information, Shrutav, and the study
okay,
resources you used.
um, okay. So I think first of all was getting the concepts right. Right, the resources were, so I mainly relied on those three resources. One was e-gmat, one was the OG books, a whole lot of questions from the OG books, and GMAT Club for some extra marks, and the forum quiz, where you could set difficulty levels. That was really a good feature. So those are the resources I used. So of my GMAT prep, initially it was just about learning the concepts, right? That's something I would say is, don't waste these official questions. I think even before starting with e-gmat, I had finished the entire quant book, um, the OG quant book of questions, and then towards the end it was like I didn't have any questions left to solve. So before jumping right into the questions, make sure that you have your concepts down. That it shouldn't happen that you face a question and you have no idea what it's asking. So getting those concepts, methods right, that's That's the first part, and then the second part is just practicing a lot. Just so these concepts, the method you have to solve them. Make it second nature. It should come to you automatically. It shouldn't be an effort for you to solve it in that way. So that just requires a lot of practice. Maybe a lot. It might become a bit boring, but putting in a lot of hours solving questions, going through the solutions, even if you're getting it correct, did you solve it the right way, or was it a fluke? Did you guess the answer? Was it some other method to solve? So yeah.
Being bored is good because then that is where your gray cells start firing. You are like, because otherwise you're
Yeah.
not thinking. So Ritesh had this follow-up question: how many mock tests you attempted, and from where? It's
Okay.
Ritesh's question.
Um,
Most
so mock
important tips and
tests.
strategies that help you succeed. I think Ritesh, it's been tips and strategies of Shrutav that helped succeed, which were like the backbone of the discussion today. But in terms of mock tests,
Yeah.
Shrutav, you
So
want to take this up?
mock tests. So I attempted. I think all of the e-gmat mock tests. Then the official mocks. I felt like 5 and 6 were a very good representation of the actual exam. So I attempted those maybe a week or two before the exam. And then I attempted the mocks on GMAT Club. Right, they have these focus tests. They have sectional tests as well. So mostly I was trying to attempt sectional tests because it doesn't take up a lot of time. While revising, usually at least I used to revise one section at a time. So after doing the section, it really helped to just give a test of that section. That's something that I think EGMAT also had. They had a lot of sectional tests. So Eh, yeah, that's where that those were my sources for the tests. Overall prep time, it took me around 4 months for the first attempt, 5 months for the second attempt.
Less than 5 months.
Yeah.
It was 25 days, Shraddha. But before we go into more questions, a lot of these congratulations and
Uh,
congratulations, bro, and all that stuff. So yeah,
thanks.
congratulations, Shraddha. You've done something
Thanks.
phenomenal, right? And I think this question is something that we've already sort of taken up, right?
Yeah.
Um, so Kanye here has, what were your biggest time savers?
Um, yeah. So time savers. I think we've gone through a lot of them in our discussions, but let's say for quant, one thing was while I was going through the questions, I was writing down all the variables listed so that I wouldn't have to go through the question again. And then I was writing down what the question was asking. It might seem like an investment upfront, writing things down, but that really helps avoid silly mistakes and going back and reading the question again. That's maybe one of the best things for quant. Another thing is you should probably have a cutoff time. Say for me, quant was like 2 minutes, 3 minutes max. So if I was stuck on the question for that long, I made the decision that no, it's worth more to invest my time in another question than be stuck here. So you can always come back to the question and get it correct. But if you're stuck for too long, towards the end you run out of time. You need to guess a lot of the ending questions. Um,
True.
DI, yeah, I think we've gone through a lot of the time savers.
We have. And I think
Yeah,
the time saver also depends on your personal strength and weakness. So
yeah,
for me, somebody who is very strong in terms of verbal, I would say my verbal BS is very quick, my TP is quick, but I will take my own sweet time to do GI or you know quant DS. But for Shraddha, who
yeah,
has a sort of a strong quant background, for him that could be his time saver, which is quant related questions. But so that is where to understand and recognize what your strengths and weaknesses, where your strengths and weaknesses lie, and see where the time savers can come from is super critical. Um, so Udeshia has this question. Sources for more CR questions, bad accuracy. Again, Shrutav, I'll of course hand the mic over to you. But Udeshia, I really want you to say if you have a difficult a problem with hard accuracy for CR questions, a whole lot of practice is not going to help you. What you really need to do
Yeah.
is yeah, see, Shruta agrees with me. What you really need to identify is why your hard accuracy is stuck. You don't need a ton
Yeah.
of questions. And I have Shruta with me here. You know, he has solved 50% of the question bank that was available to him at that point in time of the day. He did not do 120%. He utilized 50% to where he is today. So it is not about questions. It is about identifying why you're faltering, why you're taking longer, why you're underconfident, and fixing that. So that is my 2 cents, Shruta. I'm sure
Yeah.
everybody wants
It's
to hear from the horse's mouth.
no, I think this is similar to the plateauing question, right? You reach a certain level and you feel like you can't break through or improve on that. And it's all about identifying why you're getting what you're getting wrong. It's not just about keep on practicing questions. That's not going to do anything unless every question you get wrong, you identify why you got it wrong. How can I improve this so that I don't make the same type of mistake again? Because otherwise, it's just the same cycle that's going to repeat, right? You'll get some hard questions wrong. You'll say, I need to solve more questions. You solve more questions, you again get hard questions wrong. You need to identify why you're getting those questions wrong in the first place. Yeah.
Very true. It's like saying that I can't play off spin rather than saying I can't play spin at all. Right? So identify what's your weaker area and then do the targeted practice. Otherwise, you're going to be on the square one. So Mudit has this question. How is score affected for incorrect and unattempted question? Is it important? Yes, it is important to attempt all your questions. You cannot let any question go unattempted. It is about being strategic about what questions you decide to attempt, what questions you decide to bookmark and then maybe skip. But Shruta, anything that you want to add on to this?
Yeah, I think you'd be more experienced to handle this question.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
but I'm sure they want to hear from you than I.
Um,
So,
so, yeah, I would probably say it's better to have an incorrect question than an unattempted question,
unanswered.
right? Yeah,
Very
unanswered
true.
question.
So GMAT has a severe penalty for questions that go unanswered. So ensure that you answer all the questions, and even there, you ensure that you answer all the questions that you think you would be able to get right, than invest time on questions that are from your weaker areas. So that is where having a strategic understanding of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, is super critical. Okay, this is a question for you. I am not even going to answer that. Shraddha, is it realistically possible to go from 625 to 620, 725 in 15 to 20 days? I
Um,
will ask a question. You, in your cold mock score, you scored a 695. From there to a 805, how much time did you take?
hey, it's a lot of investment of time and efforts, right? So it took me 5 months to reach to that level. Um, so I don't know. Probably we need more data to answer this. Is 625 like your best case score, or I, I don't know? But 15 to 20 days, I'm not sure if it's realistic.
See, Shruta went from a 695 to a 805 in 25 days. But those 25 days were not miraculous. It was because that 695 was an outlier after all the efforts that he had put in. he should have got a way better score in his first attempt. So that is where understanding why that 625 is it your actual ability? Is it an outlier? What is it that you need to do is important. End of the day, this is something we very often say. Timelines are important, but
Mm.
timelines don't matter till you have the score in hand. Like Shrutav here has a score in hand. He is waiting till the next year, till he has his work experience to sort of, leverage his score. So, you know, end of the day, the score is valid for 5 years. Don't prioritize timelines over the score. Okay,
Mm.
here. What is the best time to schedule your GMAT? After you reach your target score or when being closer to it?
Um,
It's a nice
so
question.
maybe, yeah, this is my personal experience, so it might, vary from person to person. But for me, uh, I felt like I was a lot more serious in the studies after I had scheduled the GMAT. So like when I knew that there was a countdown going on, there were maybe 30-35 days left to the exam. Um, Before that, it always seemed like, I was consistent, but I was always pushing the date. I was like, I still have time. You know, I'll book it maybe 2 months from now, 3 months from now. Then 1 month later, I'll say the same thing. I still have a lot of time. So for me, personally, I felt like booking the exam date beforehand, even if it's a couple of months from now. It makes you more serious that there's a countdown that you can't cancel the exam now. So you become more serious and you put more efforts in.
So, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah.
Okay. So, this is the last question we are taking today because we are already 12 minutes over time. Um, I really want to take this up because Ram here is like in the last 15 days before the test, so I cannot not take his
Okay.
question. So, can you suggest some marks? Has used the official MBA marks, the GMAT Club free marks, need some free marks for practice. One thing you can always use the first Sigmax mark. Create a free trial account. You get the first mark for free. Shruta, take it up.
um, yeah. So I think you probably don't. So you'll have to give a couple of marks before the exam. Of course, there's GMAT has a lot of marks. GMAT Club has a lot of marks. Um, Probably don't have a shortage of marks, but it's not just about giving the marks, right? And if you're in your last 15 days or 2 weeks, maybe you should focus more about how you will approach the exam strategically than just keep on giving marks, right? Get your mental state ready for the exam itself. I think if you're 100% there mentally, it would lead in a much better result than burning yourself out over these next 15 days. So yeah, there are a lot of sources for mocks, but plan these next 15 days really well.
Yeah, I'm also uh, please refer to this article. So I have just shared this article for any of you who are in the last phases of last stages of that trip. What is it that you need to focus on in the last 7 days, 15 days, 7 days, 1 day before the test? Because end of the day, if you are ready to take the test, you need to be ready to take the test, and you should ensure that uh, you know on the day you are at your 100%, 120%, 150%. Shruta, what is it?
Yeah, absolutely at the 100%. So that makes a much more, it's much more impactful than studying over these next 15 days. You had a lot of time to study. You did a lot over the past few months probably. There's not a whole lot that would change over, in the last few days. So I think focus more on the mental aspect of it.
Very true. So, Shruta, we've taken most of the questions that have been here, right? Before we sort of call it a day, it's been a fruitful session. We are already 15 minutes over time. So,
Yeah.
just to wrap it up, if I were to ask you, uh, I would say three questions. One, most of us here are working professionals. What is it that you think will really make a difference to working professionals? How do they sort of balance their work with uh, demanding work life? Second, high scorers. What is it that really helps you get to a 700 plus score? Third, to those perfectionists who want that 100 percentile score. So, three things: working professionals, 700 plus scores, 100 percentile scores. I know I'm putting
Okay.
you on a spot, but you are there. You have to answer this.
Yeah. So for working professionals, see, I think it's really important to have a structured way forward, right? We don't have a lot of free time to plan all of this on our own. We don't have the experience of the syllabus to know, what is important, what's not. Test out. We don't have a lot of time to test out what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. So, you know, the e-gmat as a platform, or having some sort of platform is really helpful. It it plans out everything for you. So what you have to do is just execute, right? So then I think saving that much time is really meaningful when you're a working professional, and then being consistent, right? Every day, even if it's sometime half an hour, 1 hour, any amount of time you can dedicate, you should not have too much breaks in between. You should be very consistent, and I think you should be able to reach your goal. So your second point was high scorers. So for them, I think being conceptually sound is really important, right? You can't get a high score without knowing the theory, without knowing the methods to solve these questions and being able to execute them. uh, so before you get into a lot of practice, a lot of mocks, just get your theory down. If you need to make notes, make those notes. If there's some types of questions that are bothering you, or you're getting them wrong, make an error log. That's really helpful. Go through your error log, maybe weekly, or whatever frequency you want, but somehow that you should keep in mind that you've been making these mistakes in the past. They should not repeat in the future. And I think this structured way should help high scorers. And then for perfectionists, I mean, it's all the same, and you, I think the mental stuff really plays into effect because, even for me, it's not like a lot changed between the two attempts, but I could have like 100-point improvement just by improving some aspects of the strategy and mainly my mental game. So that's really important, and of course you need a bit of luck. There. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
No, I think we've discussed this luck before, Shruta, honestly. And even today we had this conversation. Uh, yes, 8 of I means a little bit of stars aligning. I agree, right?
Yeah.
But on a bad day for you, you still would have landed a 100 percentile score. Otherwise, 805 is not achievable. Okay, it's
Mm.
that bracket, it's that range. Okay,
Mhm.
and you wouldn't have gotten the score if you were not ready for the score. Maybe it was
Yeah.
a on a bad day, it was a 775, a 785, a 765. But even on a bad day, it would have landed you into that 100 percentile figure because between your 695 to 805, you had worked on those mental demons that were important.
Hmm. Right.
And
Huh?
yourself on the planet. Without, it is not luck. It is not magic. It's very, very hard earned, brilliant score. And
Yeah.
I sort of promised Samir here, who said we are skipping his question, which we are not. And he wanted to ask if you used official practice question bundle or just the official question bank.
So I just used the official question bank. I didn't buy the bundle. Yeah. But I think there's a lot
Um,
of questions anyways in those three, four books. Um, but yeah, if you run out, go for it.
But again, end of the day, it's not the practice. It is not the number of questions that makes the difference. It is the quality of your attempt that makes the difference.
Yes.
So the last question here. No, it segues. Did you solve every question on OG, Shruta? I'm sure you did not.
Yeah.
I work
Yeah,
with
I
you
did.
personally.
Uh,
You did not.
yeah. So um, I tried to solve as much as I could, but yeah, again, it's the same thing, right? It's identifying why you're going wrong rather than just solving questions over and over again, trying to find new sources. Um, yeah,
Yeah. And the last question for the day, guys. Did you take any coaching?
yeah. I mean, e-gmat was the coaching for me.
Yeah. Yes, of course. So, Shruta, honestly, and this is something that I tell most of the students that I work with who score high. It seems magical. It is not magical. It looks magical. It's just you click on the tab and you get that perfect score or that 100 percentile, 99 percentile score. But behind that magic is the sweat, the hard work that goes into it. And having worked with you personally, I know the kind of diligence, the hard work, the consistency, the not so good days that you have put into this preparation, and it's a very, very well deserved, uh, brilliant, perfect score. If anybody, you deserved it. So, thank you so
Yeah,
much. Uh, you are in India. It's IST
yeah,
10:30 p.m. Thank you so much for still helping other GMAT students who are still
yeah,
preparing and working on their GMAT score. Thank you so much
yeah. No,
for
no, it's a
sharing your
tough
nuggets.
and yeah, it's a long and tough journey. So it's nice if this could be of help to some people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that is what I think I like really about the GMAT community. You're not like, I have been there, done that, let me get out. You are ready and willing
Yeah.
to give it out. And thank you so much, Shruta. I'm sure a lot of us here are benefiting greatly from learning from your journey. Thanks a ton.
Yeah.
Good night. And
Yes.
all the best
Right.
for the
Yeah.
next days. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank
Yeah.
you, guys.
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
hope we picked up all your questions. Bye bye.